meeting. Mr. Wilson, please call the roll.
Mr. Tripp?
Here.
Mr. Peters?
Here.
Ms. Myers?
Here.
Ms. Shudak?
Here.
Mr. Kazire? Mr. LaFurla?
Here. Now, if you can, please join me in a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next, we have approval of our agenda. Is there a motion?
I move approval of our agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Same sign. And our agenda has been approved. Next, we have approval of minutes of the work session and regular business meetings of February 22nd, 2022. Is there a motion?
I'll motion the minutes from the work session and regular business meeting of February 22 be approved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign, and the minutes have been approved. Next is public participation. I don't see any members of the public here, so I think we can just go ahead and move on from that. And that brings us to the superintendent's report. Dr. Murillo?
Thank you, Mr. LaFurla. I will tell you, though, it was a great turnout for our fine arts and art show this evening. The student work is up all around. We had performances from our schools, and it was just a great night. I bet we had at least 200 to 300 family members here and students, and so excited. So excited. So I want to thank the families and the students for being here this evening, and especially Michaela, who oversees our department. She does a fantastic job putting together these events, and our communications office for pushing out the information. So just a wonderful evening. This time I'd like to invite Dr. Matthews to join me at the podium. We are going to present on our Winter Gold preschool assessment results. And I can tell you, Dr. Matthews has just done a fabulous job overseeing the preschool program. And tonight she will showcase some of our results from our district. And of course, we still have room to grow. You always do, especially when you're dealing with educating our 3 and 4-year-olds. But super excited, and so excited, as you know, about our Early Learning Center. And soon to have even more classrooms that we'll be able to offer pre-K for our families. So Dr. Matthews, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Murillo. Good evening.
Good
Appreciate
evening.
the time this evening to share with you our assessment results of our youngest learners in the district. Before I share those results, I do want to set the stage for you and just provide a little background about our current programming, as well as the assessment itself, as I know this is the first time some of you are hearing this report. So just a little background on who we serve and how we serve them. We proudly offer a continuum of preschool services in 32 district preschool classrooms. That ranges anywhere from a half-day program to a full-day program, and anywhere from a fully general education setting to some of our specialized settings to best meet the needs of the learner in the classroom. In addition to that, we do partner with St. Albert and the YMCA, and there are 3 additional classrooms, 2 at St. Albert and 1 at the YMCA, that meet our same quality standards, and they are part of the Iowa Quality Preschool Standards that we help implement. They get the same level of professional development and follow all of the same requirements through our partnership. As far as funding and eligibility go, we know the state funds preschool for 4-year-olds at a 0.5 level, so we really have to braid different funding sources together in order to provide as many full-day opportunities as possible. So with that, we are able to have a Head Start grant at 3 of our sites in partnership with West Central Community Action. We also have a shared visions grant, and that offers additional services to students at Rue and Roosevelt to increase that full-day programming at those sites, in addition to the Iowa West Foundation grants that we've been receiving. And then we also use Title I funding and special education funding to be able to support more full-day opportunities for students. We are criterion-based, so we screen and have an application process for our students because we know the demand is great and they have to be eligible for some of those grant opportunities in order to be served. So we really go through a developmental screener as well as looking at household income and other risk factors to determine eligibility based on a formula that is calculated for those criterion. We are very pleased that our enrollment has recovered from pre-pandemic. As you might recall, last year we saw a little bit of a dip in our enrollment because we had families decline offers, just unsure about whether or not they were ready to send their young children back into the schools. There was a level of uncertainty. But currently we have 425 students in our 4-year-old programs and 114 3-year-olds that are being served as well. And that is actually an increase of 10 students from when I reported 2 years ago prior to the pandemic, right before we shut down. So we're very pleased about that. And we know our funding is tied to that enrollment as well with those 4-year-olds, so it's really important to see that number go back up so we continue to see that level of funding from the state. Now I'll talk to you just a little bit about the tool we use. It is called Teaching Strategies Gold. This is the state-required assessment for statewide voluntary preschool program. It is widely used. It's also what Head Start uses, so it's really nice that we already have that alignment with our assessment tools. It is aligned to the Iowa Early Learning Standards as well, which is extremely helpful. It assesses 6 key areas, which you can see here on the screen. So it looks at social emotional development, mathematics, language, and literacy as 2 separate areas, the physical component, and the cognitive development. And I'll talk to you about each of those a little bit later as we look at the data too. This is an observation-based assessment, and so the teachers are collecting data on students through observation because we know, especially with 3 and 4-year-olds, a lot of their learning occurs through play, and it's not an actual paper pencil type of assessment. We need to assess their skills in authentic ways. So this allows us to do that. They are taking that data ongoing throughout the school year, but they formally checkpoint that data 3 times a year, in November, February, and May. So when you're looking at this, you have to kind of think about that fall reporting period is November. They've had about a third of the year of the school. It's not truly baseline like we see with some of our other fall assessments. So now we'll get into the performance data, which is the really exciting part. When you look at this graph, it is showing the percent of our students, and this is all students 3 and 4-year-olds together, who are meeting or exceeding the widely held expectation for their age group. And you can see those blue bars are where they were in the fall, so in November when we checkpointed, and those gold bars are showing where they were with our last checkpoint in the winter, so late February. And each of the areas below, social, emotional, physical, language, cognitive, literacy, and math, you can see we've just had really great increases in every area, which we're very pleased with. And most notably, there was a large increase in the area of mathematics. And we're really excited about that. We implemented new curriculum maps for the first time in the 1920 school year. So we didn't get to see the results of those in the spring. Last year, was a little bit different. So this is our first normal year using those curriculum maps. So we're really excited to see that strong start from our fall to winter checkpoints there. The next series of slides will show you the historical data for each of those domains, starting with 2017-18 to present time. So you will see, again, blue is fall, orange is winter, gold is spring. And this specific graph is showing you the social emotional domain and the percent of students who are meeting or exceeding the widely held expectation for that domain. What I want you to notice here is that we are seeing those nice steady increases each year from fall to winter and then also from winter to spring. And we do notice pretty consistently in different areas. In that year 18-19, we see that our fall numbers are going to be a little bit higher than they were previously. And I really attribute that to the intentionality of our curriculum maps and aligning all of our professional development, really focusing in, giving teacher-specific feedback. We also first started conducting implementation studies that were really strategic, and we use a cycle where we look at adult-child interactions, math and literacy curriculum implementation, and then just that environment and safety. So we see that the effects of that and the value of those teachers getting that consistent feedback in all areas. This is showing that same historical data for the physical area. The physical domain really looks at both gross and fine motor skills. So it could look at the student's ability to travel and balance for the gross motor piece. And then for fine motor, we're really looking at, gripping, how they're using writing tools, those kinds of things. So that's what this area is assessing. And again, you notice that we have steady increases fall to winter, winter to spring each year. In the language domain, again, you're going to see those consistent results. This is really where language and literacy in those 2018-19 years are going to stand out with having that stronger start in November after the first trimester where students were exposed to our new literacy and language curriculum maps. We incorporated literacy, language, and writing in those. So language is really looking at receptive and expressive skills. So those receptive skills being able to follow directions, multi-step directions, and then being able to listen and retell, which gets into that expressive side of things. So we're looking at both the being able to receive the information and then share it back out. The cognitive domain is next, and again, you will see that there are those steady increases here as well. With the cognitive domain, we're really looking at things that might be more like grit and persistence and flexibility in problem solving. So it might not be exactly what comes to mind when you think of cognitive. It's really some of those other skills that we measure with Panorama for our 3rd through 12th grade students. So being able to recognize that, there's a lot of kids in the block center today and I really wanted to play there, but I can be flexible and come back later. I'll try something else right now. So those are some of those skills that we're looking at. Again, we're just really pleased to see those nice steady increases from each reporting period historically. Literacy, again, going back to where we were with language, pretty consistent, where we saw the implementation of those new curriculum maps and that aligned professional development. This domain is really looking at a lot of different skills, everything from rhyming, beginning letter sounds, the ability to write your name, the child's name, the letter identification. So really a lot of skills covered here in literacy. We do get into drawing, dictation, and early invented spelling. So that's where that writing component does come in under this domain. And again, really strong data historically here. And math, I mentioned this one earlier. This is our first normal year of implementing our curriculum maps, and hopefully seeing those results. We saw a nice increase, pretty consistent with what we've seen the last couple of years. Reminder, 1920, we had that normal start to the school year, and so that was our first year trying those out, and it seems that we're pretty close to being on pace there. We do remember that the students we're serving right now were born in 2017, 2018, some even 2019. So we are working through the fact that many of them have missed some opportunities, have been isolated from peers and those social interactions. So I feel like this data is showing that we're meeting them where they are, we're responding to the needs, and we're really happy that they're in our seats so that we're able to provide them those opportunities and get these results. So with all of that in mind, I just want to revisit our district strategic goal 1, which is that by the year 2024, 80% of students will score in the average band or above on the MAP assessment in both math and reading. And why I feel this is so important is because we know that for preschool students, our goal is kindergarten readiness. We want to make sure that we are giving them those opportunities and setting that stage so that they're prepared when they enter kindergarten. And I want to share some data with you that shows how we're supporting that at the preschool level as well. So my next slide after this is a little busy. I wanted to break it down so I could really explain it with just one set of data first before revealing the larger picture. But what I'm going to show you in these slides is how we are comparing to the state and how students in our district are performing on kindergarten readiness compared to all preschoolers, 4-year-old preschoolers across the state. So what I've done is I've broken down each domain. So what you're looking at right here to the far left, the first blue and gold bars are the social emotional domain in the fall. And the blue is the state and the gold is our district. So what you'll notice there is a lower percentage of students in Council Bluffs Community School District were demonstrating kindergarten readiness skills in the fall in this domain when compared to the state. And then right next to that, the other set of bars there is showing the social emotional data for the winter. And what you'll see there is that more students are demonstrating kindergarten readiness in the district than compared to the state. So we had, in the state, they started with 50% in the fall and went up to 79%. In the district, we started with 42% and increased that to 80%. So more than closing that gap in this social emotional area, which we know is really, really important to the success of our students. So this next slide will show that same consistent result for each of our domains. So I've gone over the social emotional one, and then right next to that, within those orange lines, is the physical domain. It's that same story where we're seeing our students coming in the fall, lower percentage kindergarten ready. By winter, higher percentage kindergarten ready. And that is consistent for every domain. So we have the same for language. We're seeing that increase of 35%. For cognitive, we went from 34% to 81% demonstrating those kindergarten readiness skills. In literacy, we went from 23% to 70%, and then in math from 21% to 67%. So again, showing that we may be starting a little bit behind in some of those areas when compared to the state, but we are rising to the top and we are closing that gap for our students. This is showing that same data, but just in a little bit different way. It's showing the percent of growth from fall to winter. So basically what I just ran through with you when we went from 50 to 79 at the state in social emotional, that shows they had a 29% increase in students who are demonstrating those kindergarten readiness skills, where we had a 38% increase. So those purple bars are showing the state increase in percent kindergarten ready, and the blue line above is showing the increase that we've seen in each domain in the district. And you may be wondering how our current kindergarten students are doing. So I wanted to take a look at our class of 2034 and really see how they were doing in preschool compared to how they're doing now. So what this is showing, on the left, those 3 sets of bars are for reading and literacy. On the right, we have math. The blue bar for both of those areas is the percent of students who were kindergarten ready last spring. So our current kindergartners who were sitting in our preschool classrooms last spring, those are the percents that were demonstrating kindergarten readiness skills in both math, in literacy and math. Next to that, the gold bar is the percent that were meeting the widely held expectation in those same areas. So pretty consistent there, closely aligned. What the orange bars are showing are all kindergarten students, so not just those in our preschool, but all, and how they performed on the MAP assessment this fall. And then what Dr. Shudak did was he pulled out for me those who attended our preschools versus those who didn't, and that's what those dots are showing. So the purple dot there is showing how students who attended Council Bluffs Community School District preschool performed on the literacy map, or the MAP reading assessment. And the teal dot is showing how those who did not attend our preschool performed. And we know we serve about 50% of our incoming kindergarten students, and then the other 50% are a split of no preschool or other preschool. You'll notice that there's a little bit more discrepancy there in reading. There was a larger gap in math last year when I presented this data, but we are still pleased to see that 76% of our students, compared to 73%, were proficient on that assessment this fall, and they're really retaining those skills that they've learned in preschool, and they're able to transfer that into kindergarten. This last slide, I just really wanted to highlight some of the great work that is happening outside of our classrooms to support our classrooms as well. All of that other data, we know our teachers and teacher assistants are wonderful and they're working so hard with our students every day, but we have a wonderful support system for them as well. And with the support of our curriculum specialist for preschool, our LRE monitor who helps with special education needs and screening students who have developmental concerns, and then our early childhood consultant, we've done a lot of really great work this year. One role that they provide is receiving referrals. And referrals can come from physicians, parents or family members, other community members working with children, such as our partners at Family Inc. And anytime they're having a concern about a child's development, they enter these referrals. And what we do, our team then responds. We reach out to the family. We conduct one-on-one screenings with them. And we provide them with feedback, information, and next steps based on that screening. Oftentimes that leads to placement in our preschool programs so that we can best support their needs. So far this year, they have responded to 151 referrals, 55 of those from the community, and 96 from students who are in our programs. And when they're already in our programs, they take added steps of providing additional supports in the classroom, conducting observations, helping develop plans for the teachers and the teams at those schools. And as a result of that, 22 of those 96 went on to receive some special education services to better meet their needs within our programs. And 9 of them were responding to those extra supports, and we were able to discontinue their plans. So we were really excited about those supports. They also help transition students from early access into our preschool programs. When students reach the age of 3, they age out of early access. So we have a really great collaboration. When students are 2 years, 6 months, we start working with the early access team on a transition plan, and that includes conducting home visits with the early access team, inviting those families into our schools, observing them in our schools so we can see how they'll respond when they're in that peer school setting, and then developing some IEPs to transition them to meet their needs in our programs. So thus far, they have helped transition 16 students, 14 into our programs, 1 to the Iowa School for the Deaf, and 1 to Head Start, all with those additional services. And we will transition 7 more at least with the remainder of this year. And then finally, we use the Ages and Stages questionnaires. That is part of our screening tool for all children, part of our eligibility requirements, and they have conducted 851 screenings, and that is not a small number. So we're excited to be able to offer all of these services. We're very pleased with the results, and we know that having the Early Learning Center coming open in 2023-24 will only provide this opportunity for more families, and to be able to reach 200 more students and their families in this way is really exciting for us. So with that, I will take any questions you have.
I have just a couple quick questions related to, especially with the data when we're seeing that sharp rise from fall to spring.
Yes.
So or fall to winter. So you mentioned that they're screened, fall, winter, and spring. Roughly from the start of preschool, how far is it before they do that fall screening? Is it like a month after the first day of school for them?
It's in about mid-November, so
Okay.
they've had about a third of the year. It used to align with our trimesters pretty closely.
Okay.
But those are the state-dictated benchmark dates.
Okay, is roughly okay. That's
Yes.
good to know. Is because I
Yes.
know the first few weeks transitioning to a completely new environment for them, and
Absolutely.
that was something I
Yes.
was worried about when I was seeing that data. I was like,
And to put that into context, there are 6 domains, but there are 38 objectives within those domains. So to be able to collect all of that data consistently enough to develop a pattern to actually score takes some time too. So that's why they can't have a baseline of September. It
oh
just
yeah,
takes that
yeah.
time.
Oh, I think that was actually going to be my next question: is how they come up with that score, as far as is it over the span of a week, is it over the span of multiple weeks or something like that? But you kind of answered it for the most part.
Yes. Perfect.
Cool. Yeah, that was most of my questions. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions? when I'm out in the community talking with people about the Early Learning Center, there's a lot of different things about what we're planning to do and what we're currently doing that are impressive to folks. But that slide that shows our students' performance compared to the state average in the fall versus winter and spring, that I think is really special. I mean, it speaks to what's happening in our preschool classrooms, the support that our preschool classrooms are getting. Something special is happening in those classes when you see that type of growth. So I think that I just wanted to make that comment. I don't really have a question, but I do have a question about something else that you mentioned earlier. Can you explain the Head Start funding, like how that funnels to the district? And I know that there have been some changes with how that has worked over the recent years, but I don't totally understand how it works.
Sure. We are a contracted service provider, so the actual Head Start grant is awarded to West Central Community Action, and they serve 10 counties in our area, and they are able then to offer contracts for people to provide services that then they oversee to ensure that we're meeting all of the Head Start standards. So we have a contract with them, and then for every slot that we have full, they give us funding per pupil at the agreed upon rate.
Okay.
We invoice them each month for that.
Roughly how many spots is
So
that?
we started with 50, and they, West Central had to close some classrooms outside of our district, so we were able to pick up another 16 slots for our students.
Has that been pretty consistent over the years, or has that increased or decreased?
It
Or?
has been consistent at 50. They have a 5-year grant, so they don't have a lot of flexibility within their grant cycle to change how many students we can serve, except for in these circumstances where they weren't able to fill spots in a different location.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. And next for our informational presentation, Mr. Myers will be joining me. I think Mr. Stiles is going to put up the PowerPoint presentation. I thought it would be a really good touch point for our community and board to get an update on the work that we've been doing as we're planning around the renovation of Canesville. And so this evening, it's a pretty still high level. We haven't really got into detailed designs, but I thought it would be a nice update for the board and the community to hear the progress that we're making. So, Mr. Myers, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I'm very, very pleased to be here tonight to talk to you about this really exciting project. So, I'm going to show you the site plan, but before I do that, I'll just give you a little more context about the project. The district did a competitive RFP last fall, and DLR was the firm that was selected. We're splitting this project into 2 phases. The first phase, you could call it a master plan, you could call it an assessment, but basically we needed to know what the needs were in the building, what the facility needed, what the costs were, some conceptual drawings, so we could make some decisions, and we could also use that to prioritize. And some of the things that we went through is, we established a core planning team. We reviewed the existing data that we had for the building. And then DLR did a thorough facility assessment with their architects and engineers. And DLR, by the way, they're a firm that has their own engineering, so they do the architectural and the engineering versus contracting that out. We worked with the school and with the core team to establish the educational needs for the building, and then we did some prioritization. We came up with schematic drawings that I'm going to show you, and then the cost estimates. So by doing all that, we were able to funnel it down. And then phase 2 would be to hire an architect to carry out phase 1, design it, bid it, and then eventually build it. And our plan is to, open in August of 2023. So this is a fairly busy drawing, so it doesn't have everything, but if you kind of start in the southwest corner, there's an existing set of doors right there. So there's an existing set of doors that will be the new main entry. It'll be a direct walk-in, which will make it really nice. And we're going to do some asphalt sidewalk replacement there. What this doesn't show is we're talking about putting probably a entry feature, a front canopy, something, new signage that'll draw people to that part. And then as you go around, there's a parking lot across the street. We're going to repave that parking lot. And as you go around the building, we'll be replacing fencing. We'll be removing a walkway that goes to the gym because that won't be needed anymore because of what we're doing with the ADA. And as you go around the building, we'll be doing a lot of repair of the concrete and asphalt in the back area where the playground is and the parking. And then, it was important to us to have, this building currently is kind of unattractive to look from Broadway or Kingsville. You look at it. And so we're going to do some work on that retaining wall. Some of it will be replaced and some of it will just be repaired, and we'll put some landscaping and some irrigation there. So it'll have a much better impact for the community as they look to the building. And then they found some fairly minor brick repairs that we'll be repointing brick, things like that. Now this slide starts at the lower level, and that shows the what's going to be the new entry to the building, which will come right off of the street with no stairs. It'll have a traditional secure entrance where and the office will be just to the right, so people will be funneled through the office, and there'll be a staff restroom and another feature that we're doing with this is to move the serving and the cafeteria area down to the lower level, which will make it much more functional and usable. And I think they have 2 lunch periods of 40 to 50 students per period. So we'll have a student eating area. The stairway that comes right off that new main entrance will be widened because it's a fairly narrow stairway. So you'll have a much more pleasing effect as you see that stairway. And then the rest of the red lines are the new walls where we've got special education classes down there. And then if you look to the far right, there's an elevator lobby and a new elevator. And one of the things the architect found and we all knew it is there are some big severe ADA issues with the building. Currently, they have an older chairlift that goes up like 3 floors, and it's not really that reliable. So it's really important to put an elevator in the building. And we've looked at doing it outside the building and inside, and we feel it's probably better to do it inside. And part of the complexity of this is it's a 3-level building, but there's also 2 levels that are slightly off when they built that gym addition. So that's why the elevator will have doors on each side, where one side of the elevator will go to the mid-level floors, and the other side will open to one of the 3 floors. And the other part about the elevator is where we'll be doing. In order to build that shaft, we're going to have to do some structural scanning of the floor and things like that. So that's something that we're going to be starting in the next few weeks, hopefully. Second floor plan doesn't have as much work. You can see the same elevator lobby. Each floor will have a staff restroom, which they currently don't have. And then you can see a new teacher's lounge and laundry storage on that floor. And the 3rd floor is basically the elevator core area and some storage behind that. One of the things we tried to keep moving walls to a minimum because we didn't want the cost of this project to go any more than we had to. So, and what we're doing would be fairly generic. So. The building could be used for other things, besides the alternative learning center if we needed to. So this talks a little bit about refreshing the interior finishes. Well, the building needs a facelift. So, we're going to put new flooring throughout the facility, which include carpet, LVT, which is an upgraded vinyl tile that we've used in some of our projects, and porcelain tile. There'll be a wainscot in the hallways that will match pretty much what we've done in our other facilities. Fresh paint on all the walls, tile wainscoting on the corridors. We'll probably do a different color palette for each floor, something attractive and interesting. And then furnishings, we've got our budget set to include all new furnishings. The furniture is kind of outdated, so we'll have flexible, modern furniture that can be used in these rooms. And then this doesn't show it, but we did quite a bit of research on the HVAC and electrical system, so we have budgets in there to replace basically the cooling tower, the heat pumps, the control system, and what they call a DOAS system, which is what brings outside fresh air into the building, which currently is probably not adequate. So that's going to be a priority for us.
Is that already on your master plan?
Yes. Yes. This is just a budget summary. We have a much more detailed budget summary, which I think if you looked in the DOR contract that's going to come up later, it shows the detailed estimate that we used. So basically this talks, it's broken out into renovation and remodeling costs, general construction, mechanical, electrical, site cost, and furnishing. So that budget actually has the furnishings, we have $418,000 set aside just for replacing furniture and shelving and things like that in the building. The next line is commissioning, survey, soils, testing, permits, all those things that we typically see in projects. And then we have the professional fees below that, which is kind of an all-inclusive number. This particular contract would be based on percent of construction, of the construction only. And then we have lots of contingency. We have a 10% contingency built in. And then on top of that, we have escalation of 11.25 between the estimate and when we would actually build. We hope that's enough. That's similar to what we've done with the Early Learning Center. And then we also have we have an extra 5% for the Davis-Bacon. So, I mean, you've got up to 25% contingency, which really makes the cost seem higher. But so that makes a total project budget of just under $4.9 million, and that's just our estimate at this point in time. And we'll come back to if we get into design, we'll come back for a public hearing with some revised estimates for the board. There's our project timeline. The top two things are what we're doing today. We'll go right into design documents, and we're going to try to speed our way through the design documents so we can actually start bidding in August. And even though we only plan on vacating the school for the second semester of next year, we want to get an early start ordering materials, and there may be some things that we can do on the outside or some things that we could do that wouldn't interfere with classes. So that we would come back to the board to approve the bids in September of this year and start construction with it finishing in July of 2023. So I'll open it up to questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
Dr. Marlar, what's the plan for, do we have a space identified where we're going to move them out while the construction's working?
We are still working through. I know Dr. Voigtman's been taking the lead when working with Mr. Rand for our special education, and Ms. Colmine's been working with Mr. Barnett around the placement for our students. I think that as we get closer and toward the end of the school year, we'll be able to finalize by the time we come back for the public hearing. It is going to kind of be a little bit of a stressor, but it's much better than our students being in the building while they're doing the construction work. So we will get that finalized soon.
Thank you.
So I noticed on the floor plans, I just want to make sure I'm reading this correctly. On the third floor, there's the kitchen, but there's also another kitchen on the first floor. So will there be two kitchens?
Now,
Or will that be
that-
replaced, the third floor
That
one?
should be struck off. That'll turn
Okay.
into storage.
I just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure that everything would
pick up.
just be contained to the first floor if we're reading
Right.
it correctly.
The one thing I've tried to preserve a little bit is in case we would ever have some kind of disaster and needed an elementary school or a school that we could use if we had to do an AM and PM shift, if there was ever great damage to one of our schools, is try to preserve where we could use the school again. We'll use that as storage and probably, but I won't allow them to completely demo that because that would be a bigger kitchen, because the kitchen we have downstairs will just be probably more of a warming kitchen. It will not be fixing food. It will just have food brought in.
Any other questions or discussion? Thank you.
Thank you.
And that brings us to our one resolution for this evening, approval of architectural contract with DLR Group for the Kingsville renovation. Is there a motion?
I can move to approve DRL Group for the architectural services for the Keensville Alternative School renovation as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Wilson, please call the roll.
I just want to make sure, did Mr. Peters make the
Yes.
second? Got it, okay. Ms. Hudak?
Yes.
Mr. Peters?
Yes.
Mr. Kazire?
Yes.
Ms. Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Tripp?
Yes?
Mr. LaFurla?
Yes, and the motion carries. Before we adjourn, we had on our agenda possible return to a work session. We did have a work session as a board prior to the board meeting and had a presentation on the budget for next year. So I think we got all the questions that we had answered, yes? So no need to return to the work session, and we are adjourned.